War has often been a catalyst for heroism, tragedy, and sacrifice. But there's something even more mysterious and unsettling that happens in wars. Soldiers vanish, disappearing without a trace. In the midst of battles, skirmishes, and military campaigns, some warriors are lost in ways that leave behind more questions than answers. These disappearances aren't just about missing people. They're about soldiers who fought bravely, yet were swept away by the chaos of war, their fates never fully known. In this video, we're exploring some of the most mysterious and chilling disappearances in wartime. From the ancient legions of Rome to modern-day military operations, these are the stories of soldiers who went missing in action, never to be found. Let's uncover these lost warriors and explore the strange, eerie tales of their vanishing. 10. The Lost Legion of Rome, 9 AD. Let's begin with one of the earliest and most famous mysterious disappearances, the Lost Legion of Rome. In 9 AD, the Roman Empire sent an army, led by General Varus, into Germania. The Romans were marching through the dense forests of Teutoburg when they were ambushed by a coalition of Germanic tribes, led by Arminius, a former Roman ally. What followed was catastrophic for the Romans. Nearly 20,000 soldiers were annihilated, and their bodies were either lost, scattered, or never recovered. The Romans searched for months, but no trace of the fallen soldiers or their remains was found. Some believe the bodies were hidden or buried by the Germanic tribes, while others speculate that wild animals may have devoured them. 9. The Disappearance of Flight 19, 1945. While most of the soldiers we're talking about today are on the ground, some mysterious disappearances have taken place in the skies. Flight 19, a squadron of 5 US Navy bombers, vanished during a training flight on December 5, 1945, and the mystery surrounding it is as eerie as it is puzzling. Flight 19 was conducting a routine navigation exercise over the Bermuda Triangle, but somewhere along the way, the pilots lost their bearings. Despite their training, they became disoriented, and eventually, communication with the flight was lost. A search and rescue mission was launched, but the planes were never found. To make things even stranger, a rescue plane sent to find Flight 19 also disappeared, without any wreckage being found. 8. The Lost Soldiers of the Battle of Stalingrad, 1942 to 1943. The Battle of Stalingrad was one of the largest and most brutal conflicts of World War II, with both Soviet and German forces suffering devastating losses. In the aftermath of the battle, tens of thousands of soldiers simply disappeared. During the battle, there were reports of soldiers who vanished under mysterious circumstances. Some were reportedly captured by Soviet forces, but their names were never listed as prisoners of war. Others simply disappeared into the chaos, never to be seen again. In recent years, excavations in the Stalingrad area have unearthed mass graves, and while some of the remains can be identified, many are still unaccounted for. 7. The Disappearance of the Lost Battalion, 1918. World War I was notorious for its devastating trench warfare, but one particular disappearance during the war remains one of the most puzzling. The story of the Lost Battalion begins in October 1918, during the Battle of the Argonne Forest in France. A battalion of the US 77th Division, led by Major Charles Whittlesey, was tasked with advancing deep into enemy lines to cut off German forces. Despite repeated attempts to break through, the battalion was trapped, and after days of fighting, the soldiers were either killed or taken prisoner. The US military launched a rescue operation, but it wasn't until 5 days later that the survivors were found. What makes this disappearance so strange is that while most of the battalion's members were eventually rescued, many soldiers remained missing, with their bodies never recovered. 6. The Disappearance of the 1st Australian Imperial Force, 1917. During World War I, Australia's 1st Australian Imperial Force, AIF, played a pivotal role in key battles. However, one particular episode of disappearance occurred during the Battle of Fromelles in 1917. The battle was fought on the Western Front in France, and it was one of the most disastrous for the Australians. The 1st AIF was tasked with launching an offensive against German lines, but the attack was poorly coordinated. The result was devastating. Over 5,500 Australian soldiers were either killed, wounded, or went missing. Many of the missing were presumed to have been captured or killed in action, but their bodies were never recovered. It wasn't until decades later, in the 2000s, that mass graves were discovered near Fromelles, leading to the identification of several soldiers. 5. The Battle of Mogadishu, 1993. The Battle of Mogadishu, also known as Black Hawk Down, is often remembered for the intense firefight between US forces and Somali militia. However, there were several mysterious disappearances during this battle that still raise questions. On October 3, 1993, American soldiers were sent on a mission to capture Somali warlord Mohammed Farah Aidid's lieutenants. While many soldiers were eventually rescued, there were reports of some simply vanishing during the battle. Some of these soldiers were likely killed or captured, but there was never enough evidence to confirm their fates. The mystery surrounding these lost soldiers lingers in the memories of those who fought in Mogadishu, and their disappearances remain an unresolved chapter in the Battle of Mogadishu. 4. The disappearance of the lost platoon in Vietnam, 1966. In 1966, a platoon of US soldiers was sent on a routine patrol in the jungles of Vietnam. They were part of Operation Hastings, a mission designed to flush out North Vietnamese forces. But somehow this platoon, numbering over 20 men, was separated from the rest of the group and became trapped in the dense jungle. Some believe the platoon was ambushed by the North Vietnamese and killed in a sudden attack, but no bodies were ever recovered. Others speculate that the soldiers were captured, but no POWs were listed. 3. The disappearance of the lost platoon in the Falklands War, 1982. The Falklands War between Argentina and the United Kingdom in 1982 also had its own mysterious disappearances. In one particular case, a British platoon was sent to investigate an area suspected of harboring Argentine forces. The soldiers went in, but after contact was lost, a full search effort was initiated. Despite combing the area thoroughly, no sign of the platoon was ever found. Some believe that the soldiers were trapped in a hidden location, while others think they may have been taken by the Argentine forces, but the mystery surrounding their disappearance remains. 2. The Lost Soldiers of the Korean War, 1950 to 1953. The Korean War remains one of the most tragic and mysterious conflicts of the 20th century, particularly when it comes to missing soldiers. Thousands of American and South Korean soldiers vanished during the war, their fates uncertain. Many were captured by the North Koreans, but their names were never recorded in prisoner of war logs. Other soldiers disappeared during fierce battles, with their bodies never found. Perhaps the most perplexing aspect of the Korean War's missing soldiers is the continued search for their remains. Even after the war ended in 1953, efforts to locate and identify these lost soldiers continue to this day, with some still believed to be held in North Korean prison camps. 1. The disappearance of the lost soldiers of WW2's Pacific Theater, 1941 to 1945. The Pacific Theater of World War II was filled with intense fighting, and many soldiers, both American and Japanese, disappeared without a trace. One of the most enduring mysteries is the fate of soldiers who went missing on islands such as Guadalcanal, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. These soldiers were often isolated, cut off from their units during fierce combat. Some were presumed dead, but their bodies were never recovered. Others were possibly taken as prisoners of war and never documented. What makes this so mysterious is the sheer scale of missing persons. Tens of thousands of soldiers vanished during the Pacific Campaign. There's no greater mystery than the disappearance of those who were supposed to be brought home, the soldiers who fought and sacrificed, but whose stories were left unfinished. From ancient Rome to modern-day conflicts, the lost soldiers we've talked about today left behind questions that may never be answered. But it's important to remember their courage, sacrifice, and the impact they had on the course of history. If you enjoyed uncovering these mysteries, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you know of any other lost soldiers or missing soldiers from history. Thank you for watching, and remember, history is never truly finished. Some stories are just waiting to be uncovered.